We're currently standing behind the Holiday Inn Express, which is situated on Epsom Downs, and this is where we're staying. Exactly behind me is the pull-up of the Investec Derby, and ironically, this is the starting stalls that will fire away the field for the 2016 renewal of the world's most famous thoroughbred horse race. And of course, Michael Cattermole, as always, is the man that called the DANTE Stakes, which is the most valuable pointer amongst many other races, to this year's particular race. And of course, it was a horse called Wings of Desire that was victorious there with Frankie Dettori. Whether he has the same mettle as a horse called Golden Horn, who was victorious last year, remains to be seen. But let's hook up with Mike Cattermole on the telephone now to find out what his views are on the Investec Derby with just 3 days to go at the time of broadcast.
As we speak now, it's a typical sort of, spring weather here in the UK. It's showery at the moment, but you're right. Being the chalk downs up there, the ground, I don't think is going to be really bad. It never is on Derby Day, but at least he's shown that he can handle a sound surface now, and having won easily before in really soft ground too. He's pretty flexible. We were all fascinated last week, Andrew, that he didn't ride Foundation, and that he wanted to get on Wings of Desire to see what potentially had as a Derby colt, even though he'd been taken out of the race. He'd been pulled out of the mix by John Gosden, so the connections will have to supplement him with 75,000 sterling now to get back in the Investec Derby. They'll do that because the Bamfords who bred and own him are extremely wealthy people. But yeah, Wings of Desire was a revelation. He came from a long way back. The Deauville got first run on him, but he's still running down. He won by, a neck or so, and smack bang in the middle of the picture. Wasn't the sort of performance, though, that Golden Horn put up 12 months ago, which was brilliant. It lacked that brilliance. But again, he's another one that didn't race as a 2-year-old, so he's come a long way in a short space of time.
Well, I think the really exciting thing for me is when you read John Gosden's comments on Wings of Desire. I said he never did a piece of half speed until the middle of March. He's freakish for John Gosden to say that.
Yeah, it is incredible, isn't it? And clearly he's got bags of ability. I mean, he's from a family, chock full of talent. He must go there with a lot of ticks in the right boxes. The only worry, I suppose, for all these late maturers is, does the Derby come too quickly for them? That's the worry. But he'll be supplemented, and Dettori will be on him. And he's got to be a big player, isn't he?
Well, it's quite ironic, really, because I think if my memory serves me correctly, the same was true of Golden Horn last year. And Sir Anthony Oppenheimer also had to pay the 75,000 quid.
Yeah, you're right. Again, being the De Beers family, the diamond merchants, that wasn't an option that troubled him too much. But listen, I remember when I called home Golden Horn last year at York, Andrew, I thought that's the Derby winner. Without a shadow of a doubt. He was absolutely sensational. Wings of Desire, I thought, beat a horse called Deauville, who I always thought was just a little bit below the best last year. He did well to win the race, don't get me wrong, but I just got the impression that the spark of brilliance that you associate with a Derby winner wasn't there with Wings of Desire. And not in the same way that I was thrilled by the Gurkha, that's for sure.
Okay, well, what about US Army Ranger? He was very, very impressive when scoring on debut, 1 mile, 2 furlongs at the Curragh, making relentless progress. Is he in that league?
Well, you have to say on what he's done so far, no. He won the Chester Vase. He, as you know, it was a controversial race because Stewart didn't feel as though Shamie Heffernan was riding with enough vigour on Port Douglas, who gave him £4 that day. And they pulled 7/8 clear, which is a good sign in a sense. But, the horse that was back in third, Andrew, was rated only 94. You'd expect them to beat, if they're, going to be half-decent colts, you'd expect them to beat Ormito by at least 7 lengths. I thought US Army Ranger, to me, shaped like a St. Ledger type in the Chester Vase. I don't know whether he'd have the pace to be a Derby winner, but I could be very, very wrong. He's got a good attitude, though.
Yeah, that's half the battle won, because it can be very, very steamy, both in terms of the crowd participation and also, as Frankie says in his campaign, he says it's like they've cut a strip right through the middle of the crowd. There's no bigger day than Derby Day for frightening a horse.
Well, this is why I think they're very keen to run horses like US Army Ranger at Chester, Andrew, because Chester is smack bang in the middle. There's no part of the track really where you're not going to be affected by a crowd of people. It's a good education for them. I didn't see anything wrong with US Army Rangers' temperament, or indeed any of the other colts in the lead up to Epsom so far. But it seems to be, we always say every year, don't we? It's a wide open derby, and this year it seems to me to be more of a spread of talent than I've ever seen before for the race. We often say, "Oh, it doesn't look like a good derby," but it's never a poor derby, Andrew. It's always a great race.
No, exactly. They don't. Good horses. I mean, bad horses don't win the derby. You know, even a horse like Rule of the World, who wasn't the right one from the yard. Australia, I don't know what's happened to him. Camelot, I'm not sure what's happened to him. But of course, you go back to the inaugural running of the Investec Derby. See the Stars is just the supreme racehorse and will always be associated with greatness.
Yeah, See the Stars, absolutely. He's a huge talent, See the Stars, and as a sire, he's making a mark too, isn't he? It's very, very exciting.
Well, it actually brings me to my next horse, and that's Cloth of Stars, trained by Andre Fabre. They don't come across the channel for nothing. They've got a formidable record. Tell us about Cloth of Stars, Mike.
Yeah, Cloth of Stars is fascinating, Andrew, because unlike his dad, he's been quite hard to settle in his races. I've watched him quite carefully last season in France, trained by Andre Fabre, of course. And he used to take such a strong hold in his races. But for the first time, last time out, when he won the Prix Ocar, he was the first time he actually settled and was able to use his turn of foot to great effect. And I think now that he's maturing, I think he's a real player. I'm rather hoping he'll come over because I think he's going to be a big player. I really do.
Okay, and then to put the lid on it, I'm just going to mention two other horses that have to come into the fray purely on collateral form. Port Douglas definitely being one of them on the run to US Army Ranger, and then Moonlight Magic with the brilliance of Jim Bolger behind him.
Yeah, that's Port Douglas, who was second in the Vars behind US Army Ranger, giving him £4 that day. That was a good trial he ran there, Port Douglas. No question about that. But I just feel as though they acknowledge themselves at Ballydoyle that he's a solid Group 2 performer. He's not going to be good enough to win a derby. Moonlight Magic fascinates me because there's a little glint in Jim Bolger's eye about this colt. And he won the Leopardstown Derby trial, of course, beating Shogun that day. And he did it in a slightly workmanlike fashion, but with a great attitude. And one thing about him, Andrew, Moonlight Magic, he is going to get a mile and a half. He's got loads of stamina.
Same sire as Golden Horn?
He's a half-sister to See the Stars and Galileo.
My goodness gracious. And he's by the same sire as last year's winner.
Yeah, Cape Cross. We know that Cape Cross gets mile and a half winners. He gets them all the time. And, he sired two Derby winners already, hasn't he? In See the Stars and Golden Horn, and an Oaks winner in Ouija board. So what more do you need?
And, of course, Kevin Manning won't have the same unenviable task as he did when he was hot pot favourite to win the Investec Derby and having to settle, was it New Approach?
Well, yeah. Well, New Approach was an amazing. Kevin's had two interesting runs around there, hasn't he? New Approach didn't settle, and won the Derby, and then the Guineas winner Dawn Approach, didn't settle at all, and was an absolute disaster in the Derby. And of course, they came back and. He came back and he won some good races back at a mile again. Do you remember that in Rule of the World Derby? He pulled like a train.
Well, it was absolutely frightening. I mean, he literally bolted round the side of the field and he was a spent force at least halfway down the straight.
Yeah. Amazing that he came back after that, but he did. They brought him back, just over 2 weeks later. A great training performance by Jim Bolger
at Ascot
to win the St James's Palace from Toronado in that great finish.
That was unbelievable. That was really special. At this moment in time, if you had to be accosted by a CNN cameraman or a Sky News cameraman and they just asked you for your broad, big picture of the Investec Derby, how would you sum it up?
I like Wings of Desire at York, but I feel as though the Derby's coming a bit too soon. I'm a big fan of Cloth of Stars now that he's getting his act together, and Moonlight Magic as well is showing all the right signs of being prepped for the big day by a master trainer. So it's shaping up beautifully.